Howdy gamers, and death is fun and all, but I don't think I'm ready to do all that yet. I mean, I still have so many items left on my bucket list, and since I have nothing to do today other than a tax audit, with all this free time on my hands, I might try and cross a few items off, so let's see what we can do. Okay, let's see what we should do today. Scalp copies of Mario 3D All-Stars. I've already done that. There has to be something else on here that I haven't done, though. Okay, let's keep going. Go to a haunted garage sale and go to a non-haunted garage sale. That just seems like foreshadowing. Okay, buy way too many Wii U games. I have more than 3, so once again, I'd say I've already done that. Okay, ooh, play a PC game that everyone thinks is a masterpiece that I end up thinking is just fine. Now that sounds like a fun way to spend my afternoon. I went in with low expectations when playing Day of the Tentacle, because it was one of those games that were made in the quote-unquote golden era of PC games that everyone talks about nowadays. With people just looking back on the past and going, yeah, video games sure were better back then. Like, okay bud, the last 10 winners of Game of the Year were all games made this past decade. If old games are so great, then explain that one. People always think their generation had it better, like, forget New Zealand, my generation had it way better. And if you're wondering why I even bothered playing Day of the Tentacle if I have such a vendetta against playing games at 11 years older than me, it's because this is part of a series on the channel where I go over the top 125 games of all time, and Day of the Tentacle Remastered was number 117. And to be honest, as much as I went on about how bad I thought the game was going to be, I was actually surprised by it. I actually like this game. For starters, the graphics are amazing. They look like they're straight out of a Saturday morning cartoon and fit this game perfectly. The character models are just so expressive and well made, and from what I can tell, everything in the game was hand drawn, and it really does show. The cartoony graphics fit the game's theme perfectly, because just like a Saturday morning cartoon, the game never takes itself too seriously. Take this story of the game for example. In it, 2 tentacles escape from Dr. Fred's lab, and one of them drinks toxic sludge and grows arms, and then plans to take over the world. So, it's up to Laverne, Hoagie, and Bernard to stop them by going back in time to yesterday to turn off Dr. Fred's toxic sludge machine. But then, as they're using it, Dr. Fred's time machine messes up, sending Hoagie 200 years to the past, and Laverne 200 years in the future. So now, they have to fix their time machine so they can go back to yesterday to stop the tentacles from taking over. Honestly, it's such a simple plot, but I still love it so much, and the ending is just amazing as well. And if the story sounds short, that's because the game itself is, with it only being around 5.5 hours. Of course, technically the game could be a lot longer than just those initial 5.5 hours, based on what you do. And I'm not talking about playing through the game blindfolded, although I'm sure that would make the game a lot longer. What I mean is, when you're playing as Bernard, there's a computer, and if you boot it up, you can play through the entirety of Maniac Mansion, which is the prequel to this game. So that means you're getting 2 games here, which is why if I ever get stranded on a desert island, I'll be sure to remember to bring my computer with me so I can play Day of the Tentacle and Maniac Mansion. And I would also bring my keyboard and my mouse and my monitor. Ooh, and also my copy of Dark Souls signed by Tommy Wiseau. Never leave the house without it. To be fair, Maniac Mansion is a bit dated, so it might not be for everyone, but even with Day of the Tentacle being only 5.5 hours, it's only $15 on Steam. Plus, I really do think that this game is better off being a shorter experience, because I feel if the game continued on, its problems would only become worse. I don't really have many problems with this game, but for starters, the fact that the mouth movements in this game don't line up with the voice lines annoys me way more than it should. I don't get why this happens, because this isn't an anime, this is a point and click. And it's not like the game was originally made in Spanish and then dubbed over in English. That I could at least understand, but no, they just chose to do this for some reason.
Please, let me suffer in peace.
Why? Another issue I had with the game was that there are a lot of graphical issues. They never messed up things too much. I could always get around based on just knowing the area, but that didn't make it any less annoying. Also, one time it happened during a cutscene, which was even more annoying. I'm not entirely sure if this was my fault, because the thing is with PC games, it's hard to know if the game is just glitchy or if I just have a bad PC, but my computer can run Snake on Google pretty well, so I don't think it's my computer's fault here. Other than the voiceovers and the glitches though, the only other problem I had with this game were the puzzles. overall, I would say for the most part that they are well integrated into the game. They don't feel like they're puzzles for the point of there just being a puzzle. Every puzzle you do helps progress the story in some way. The problem is though that most of them are just way too confusing, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I had to use a guide for 3/4 of the game. And I don't really like that all that much considering it's a puzzle game. Most of the time it's just way too unclear to me as to which NPC you're supposed to be talking to or what item you're supposed to be using because there's so many NPCs and items. I will say that the game usually does a good job as to getting across what you're supposed to be doing. I get that I'm supposed to be making sure this hamster isn't cold anymore. I just didn't realize I was supposed to use a crowbar to pull this dime off the floor, so I can put it in here, which will push this guy off his bed, and then I can grab his sweater and use the crowbar again on the vending machine to get a bunch of quarters, and then use all the quarters in the washing machine, so that way the washing machine will last 200 years and I can put the sweater in, and then the sweater will shrink down until it's the size of a hamster. I don't really know where to start with the problem there, but for starters, I would have to say that I'm 16 and I don't really know how a dryer works. And it's not like that's just one isolated example of a puzzle being confusing. Take for example what I'm going to call the Benjamin Franklin puzzle. In it, you're trying to get your battery charged, and it's obvious that you need Ben Franklin to fly his kite with the battery and then get it struck by lightning, so you need to somehow get there to be a thunderstorm. But guess how you're supposed to do it? And if you said, oh, you need to get soap, a bucket, and a brush, and then clean the carriage right outside the house, and then it will start to rain. Hello? Hold on one sec. Yeah, I'm just calling BS on that. There's just no way a player would have known to do that. It would have made more sense to just have the rain happen after you've progressed enough in the story. What makes this even worse is that you're playing as 3 characters, and don't get me wrong, I like this idea. It's a cool concept to be switching between 3 different characters. Not only does it help keep things fresh, but it's so cool that each of the characters are in the same house, just in different time periods. It's interesting to see what's changed over the years. Also, a lot of puzzles will have you affecting the future by changing things in the past, like Bernard putting a pulley on the flagpole, so that as Laverne you can pull the flag down. It's a cool idea, but a lot of the time it's not as simple as that and just gets confusing. Also, sometimes you have to use the time machine to send items to each other, which I thought was cool, but there are so many items in the game, and the fact that they can all be used in so many ways, across so many scenarios, kinda makes it confusing. But then again, who knows, that was just my experience, and maybe if you play, you'll find the puzzles easy, because puzzles are really subjective, and even then, like I said, I didn't mind using a guide for the parts I didn't know how to do for the most part. Also, I did like this game, so let's get back to some of the good parts, like the soundtrack, and oh my gosh, this is a good soundtrack. My favorite part is how all the different time periods use different instruments to make it sound like that time. So in the past, it'll sound like this. In the present, it'll sound like this. And then in the future, it sounds like this. It just sounds so freaking good. And also, something I haven't got to mention yet is the conversations you have with people. They are hilarious, and I wasn't talking to people out of worrying that I'd miss something important. Although that will happen. Honestly, I just enjoy talking to people to see what funny things they would say. I really enjoyed this aspect of the game, and it was always a treat when I'd get to see a new character. Honestly though, that just goes for the whole game. There are so many funny moments that happen throughout, like recurring jokes, to slapstick, to good writing, and I am being serious when I say this is one of the funniest games I've ever played. Overall, I'd say Day of the Tentacle Remastered is a good game. Other than the weird lip syncing, the somewhat wonky graphical issues I encountered, and the puzzles, I had no problems with it, and even then I don't really mind using a guide for a game as long as the gameplay isn't god-awful. That's why to give the game a score of 100, I would honestly give it a 70 out of 100. And honestly, I don't even like point and clicks, and that should show you how funny and charming this game is. That if me, someone who doesn't like point and clicks, gives it that high of a score, you know it's a good game. And on top of that, that's why I would give this the Best Point and Click Game Award. This is usually where I'd say, haven't played any other point and clicks, and make a funny joke out of it, but honestly, I think this is probably one of the best point and clicks out there. So if you like point and clicks or just don't mind playing them, please give this game a try. Or, who knows, maybe I just like this because it felt good to finally scratch an item off my bucket list, and I think I missed my tax audit, but missing a tax audit never hurt anyone, so I guess we can go ahead and scratch some more items off my bucket list. Let's see here, there's actually nothing I can do right now. My last 2 items are finish the bucket list and die. You see, that's what we in the business call a loophole, because you can't die without finishing your bucket list, and you can't finish your bucket list in this scenario without dying, so that pretty much means I'm invincible, but just to be safe, I should add something that I'll never do, so that way I can just be extra safe. Well, I guess that's all done with, so until next time, stay safe, and I love you guys.